The dog never barks, but every time he sees this photo, something changes, and the reason is powerful. Michael Johnson was watching Buddy for the 10th time that morning, trying to understand the animal's strange behavior. The golden-haired dog stood motionless in front of the living room shelf, staring intently at the framed photograph of his parents, Robert and Sarah Johnson. The 30-year-old man got up from the grey couch where he'd been trying to work on his laptop and walked over to the animal. Buddy never barked. In 3 years of living with the dog he'd inherited from his father, Michael had never heard so much as a single bark. But whenever the animal saw that particular photo, something in his behavior shifted completely. "What is it, Buddy?" Michael asked softly, placing a hand on the dog's back. The dog began to tremble slightly, as he always did when fixated on the image. His ears perked up, and he let out a low sound, almost a whimper, but never a bark. Michael noticed the animal's eyes seemed to recognize something in the photograph that he himself couldn't grasp. The modest house in the Hope Valley neighborhood of New York City was the only home Michael had ever known. He'd grown up there with his parents until he was 25, when he decided to leave and try his luck as a freelance graphic designer. 2 years later, his father Robert vanished without a trace, and his mother Sarah could no longer care for Buddy alone. "You take the dog, son," Sarah had said at the time, her eyes red from crying. "Your father loved this animal more than anything. Maybe he'll be better off with you." Michael agreed to take care of Buddy, even though he didn't know much about dogs. The animal was gentle, obedient, and most of all, quiet. Neighbors often remarked they'd never seen such a silent dog. Buddy didn't bark at strangers, didn't bark when the doorbell rang, didn't even bark at other animals on the street, but there was something different about his behavior in front of that photograph. Michael noticed the dog's gaze was locked specifically on his father's face in the picture. Robert Johnson stood smiling beside Sarah, both of them embracing in front of the house where Michael now lived alone with Buddy. "You miss him too, don't you?" Michael murmured, stroking the dog's head. Buddy turned to look at Michael with those deep brown eyes, as if trying to say something important. The young man had always felt the dog held secrets about his father, but he never knew how to decipher the signals the animal was trying to send. Michael's routine was simple. He woke up early, made coffee, fed Buddy, and settled on the couch with his laptop to work on design projects. The small ground floor apartment was cozy, with an open living room and kitchen and 2 bedrooms in the back. The decor was minimalist, furnished with pieces Michael had bought using savings from his first jobs. That Tuesday morning, as Michael typed up a quote for a client, Buddy remained frozen in front of the shelf. His behavior was more intense than usual. The dog seemed restless, shifting positions every few minutes, but never taking his eyes off the photograph. Michael closed his laptop and decided to pay closer attention. He walked over to the shelf and picked up the framed photo, examining every detail. It was a simple picture, taken about 4 years earlier, during his parents' wedding anniversary. Robert wore a light blue shirt and Sarah had on a floral dress. Both smiled naturally at the camera. "What do you see here that I can't, Buddy?" Michael asked, holding the photo out to the dog. The animal moved closer to the image and began sniffing the frame intensely. His nostrils flared, and he let out that same low, mournful sound again. Michael noticed that Buddy seemed to recognize not just the visual image, but also some lingering scent on the object. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Michael placed the photograph back on the shelf and went to answer. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly neighbor who had lived next door for over 20 years. "Good morning, Michael," said the gray-haired woman wearing a simple patterned dress. "I brought these cookies I made yesterday. I remembered you like the coconut ones." "Thank you so much, Mrs. Jenkins," Michael replied, accepting the plate with a smile. "You're always so kind. Would you like to come in for some coffee?" "I'd love to, dear. It's been a while since we've had a proper chat." Mrs. Jenkins stepped inside and greeted Buddy, who approached her with his tail wagging slowly. She was one of the few people the dog showed affection to, aside from Michael. "How's this quiet little boy doing?" she asked, petting the dog's head. "Still not barking?" "Still not," Michael answered, preparing the coffee in the kitchen. but today he's acting strange. He keeps staring at my parents' photo on the shelf and seems restless. Mrs. Jenkins glanced toward the living room and saw Buddy once again positioned in front of the photograph. She walked over and observed the animal for a moment. "You know, Michael," she said thoughtfully, "this dog has always been special. Your father used to say Buddy was the smartest animal he'd ever known." Michael brought 2 cups of coffee and joined his neighbor in the living room. Buddy remained near the shelf, but now seemed to be listening to their conversation. "Mr. Robert told many stories about Buddy," Mrs. Jenkins continued. "He said the dog could understand things even he didn't. Once, your father even mentioned that Buddy knew things about the past that no one else did." "What kind of things?" Michael asked, intrigued. "I'm not sure, dear. Your father was always a bit mysterious about certain things, but I remember him saying Buddy had an extraordinary memory and could recognize people and situations even after a long time." Michael watched the dog with renewed interest. Buddy seemed to be listening, shifting his gaze between the 2 humans and the photograph on the shelf. "Do you remember when my father brought Buddy home?" Michael asked. "Yes, I do," Mrs. Jenkins replied, taking a sip of coffee. "It was about 6 years ago. Your father came home one night with the dog as a puppy. He said he'd found him abandoned, but at the time, I thought it was odd because Buddy didn't look like a typical stray. He had the traits of a purebred, well-cared-for dog." Michael had never questioned Buddy's origins. His father had always said he'd found the dog on the street, but now, listening to Mrs. Jenkins, he began to wonder if there were more details to the story he didn't know. "Did my father ever say anything more about how he found Buddy?" Michael pressed. "Not much," Mrs. Jenkins reflected. "But I remember in the first few weeks Buddy would cry a lot at night. Your father would spend hours talking to him, as if trying to calm him down. And there was something curious. Buddy only settled down when your father showed him some old photographs." "Old photographs?" Michael grew even more interested. "Yes, I could see it from my window. Your father would sit on the porch with Buddy in his lap and show him pictures. The dog would stop crying and just stare at them, as if recognizing something." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. He'd never heard this story before. His parents had always been private about many things, but now he was beginning to realize there were layers of family history he knew nothing about. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, "Do you know what those photographs were?" Michael asked. "I couldn't see them clearly from my house," admitted Mrs. Jenkins, "but they looked like old pictures, maybe family photos. Your father kept them in a box he always had in his bedroom." Michael knew the box the neighbor was referring to. After Robert disappeared, he had found it in his parents' closet, but Sarah told him not to touch it, saying it was just old, unimportant documents. "Where is your mother now?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. "I haven't seen her in a while." "She went to live with my aunt in Boston," Michael explained. "After my father disappeared, she couldn't stay in this house anymore. She said everything here reminded her too much of him." "I understand perfectly," the neighbors sighed. "It must have been very hard for Sarah. They were such a close couple. Robert's disappearance was a shock to all of us on this street." Michael remembered the confusing days after his father vanished. Robert had left home on a Thursday morning, saying he had some business to take care of downtown. He never came back. The police investigated for weeks, but found no concrete leads. Robert had simply disappeared without a trace. "Do you have any theories about what might have happened to my father?" Michael asked directly. Mrs. Jenkins hesitated before answering, glancing at Buddy, who was still listening intently. "Well, Michael, I don't like to speak ill of others, but I always thought your father seemed worried about something in the months before he disappeared. He looked nervous, always glancing around when he left the house, and Buddy was acting differently back then too." "Different how?" "The dog was more restless, like he sensed danger. Sometimes I'd see Buddy at the living room window, watching the street for hours. It was like he was guarding against something." Michael looked at Buddy, who had now lain down but kept his eyes fixed on the photograph. The dog's behavior that day did seem more intense than usual. "Do you think Buddy might know something about what happened to my father?" "I'm sure he does," Mrs. Jenkins answered without hesitation. "Dogs have sharp intuition. They sense things we humans can't see. If Buddy's acting strange around your parents' photo, maybe he's trying to tell you something. After Mrs. Jenkins left, Michael was alone with Buddy in the living room. The dog had returned to his spot by the shelf, but seemed even more restless now. Michael decided to test something. He took the photograph from the shelf and placed it on the coffee table. Buddy immediately approached the table and began sniffing the photo intensely. He circled it, making soft sounds Michael had never heard before, almost like melancholic murmurs as if trying to communicate. "You're trying to tell me something about my father, aren't you, Buddy?" Michael said, kneeling beside the dog. Buddy looked straight into Michael's eyes and placed his paw on the photo frame, a deliberate gesture as if pointing to something specific in the image. Michael examined the photo more closely. It was a simple picture, his parents hugging, smiling at the camera. The background showed the front of the house they were in now. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. But then Michael noticed something he hadn't before. In the lower right corner, partially cut off by the frame, was a small glimpse of what looked like another person. It was just a piece of clothing, but it was there. "Was there someone else in this photo, Buddy?" Michael murmured, studying the detail. The dog grew restless when Michael mentioned the possibility of another person in the picture. Buddy began pacing in circles around the table, clearly disturbed for some reason. Michael decided he needed to talk to his mother. He picked up the phone and dialed Sarah's number in Boston. "Hello, Mom," he said when she answered. "Hi, son. How are you? And Buddy?" "We're fine, Mom. But I have a question about a photo of you and Dad, the one in the frame here in the living room." There was a pause on the other end before Sarah responded. "Which photo, Michael?" "The one of the two of you hugging in front of the house. Do you remember when it was taken?" "I do." Sarah's voice grew quieter. "It was on our wedding anniversary about 4 years ago." "Mum, was there someone else in the original photo? Because here in the corner, it looks like it was cut out." Another pause, longer this time. "Why are you asking this, son?" "Buddy's been acting really strange around this photo. It's like he recognizes something I can't see, and Mrs. Jenkins told me some things about Dad that I didn't know." "What kind of things?" Sarah asked, tension evident in her voice. "About how Buddy came into our family, about old photos Dad used to show him." "Mum, are you hiding something from me?" Michael heard Sarah take a deep breath on the other end. "Michael, there are things about your father I never told you because I thought it was for the best, but maybe it's time you knew the truth." "What truth, Mom? I can't talk about this over the phone. It's too complicated. Can you come to Boston this weekend? I need to show you some things and explain properly." Michael looked at Buddy, who had stopped pacing and was now watching the conversation intently, as if he knew something important was being discussed. "All right, Mom. I'll come on Saturday, but at least tell me one thing. Was Buddy really found abandoned on the street?" Sarah took her time answering. "No, son. Buddy wasn't found on the street. He belonged to someone very important in your father's life. Someone you don't know, but who's key to understanding what happened." "Who, Mom?" "On Saturday, Michael. I need to show you some things first, and bring Buddy with you. He's as much a part of this story as we are." The call ended, leaving Michael with more questions than answers. He looked at Buddy, who was now lying beside the table where the photograph remained. The dog seemed calmer, as if he knew someone was finally paying attention to the signs he'd been trying to convey. Michael spent the rest of the afternoon watching Buddy and trying to decipher the animal's behavior. Every time he approached the photo, Buddy displayed the same pattern of agitation, followed by melancholy. It was as if the image stirred painful memories for the dog. That night Michael had trouble sleeping. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. His father had secrets he'd never imagined. Buddy wasn't just a stray Robert had taken in out of kindness. There was a much more complicated story behind the animal's presence in the family. The next morning, Michael woke to find Buddy once again positioned in front of the shelf. But this time, the dog wasn't looking at the photo of his parents. His focus was higher up, on the top shelf where Michael kept some books. "What is it now, Buddy?" Michael asked, intrigued. The dog began to bark. For the first time in 3 years, Buddy let out loud, insistent barks. Michael froze, The animal who never made a sound was now barking desperately at the top shelf. Michael Johnson grabbed a chair and climbed up to see what had caught Buddy's attention. Among the books, he found a small shoebox he didn't remember putting there. The box was old, with a yellowed label stuck to the lid. "Where did this come from?" Michael murmured, stepping down from the chair with the box in his hands. Buddy stopped barking as soon as he saw Michael with the object. The dog approached the box and began sniffing it intensely, showing the same excitement he had displayed with the photograph. Michael opened the box and found a collection of old photos, documents, and some personal items he didn't recognize. The pictures were of people he had never seen before, but there was something familiar about some of them. One of the photos immediately caught his eye. It showed a young man holding a puppy that was clearly Buddy. The man wasn't his father, but there was an obvious physical resemblance. Michael examined the photo more closely and saw that on the back was written, "Matthew and Buddy, 2018. "Matthew?" Michael said aloud. Buddy grew visibly agitated upon hearing the name. The dog began pacing in circles again, making sounds that now clearly seemed like recognition and longing. Michael kept examining the contents of the box. There were handwritten letters, old documents, and more photographs. One of the letters was addressed to Robert Johnson, his father. Michael opened the envelope and began reading. "Robert, my brother, I know you're taking good care of Buddy. He's always been special to me, just as you've always been the brother I admired most. All I ask is that you care for him as if he were your own son. Buddy has an incredible memory and never forgets the people he loves. One day, when it's safe, I'll come back for him. Until then, thank you for protecting what matters most to me. With love, Matthew." Michael read the letter 3 times before he could process the information. His father had a brother named Matthew whom he had never known. Buddy wasn't a stray dog. He had belonged to this unknown uncle who had entrusted him to Robert's care. "Buddy, you belong to my Uncle Matthew?" Michael asked the dog. The animal immediately stopped pacing and looked straight at Michael. For the first time, Buddy seemed to truly recognize that Michael was understanding something important about his past. Michael kept examining the documents in the box. There were birth certificates showing that Robert Johnson had a twin brother named Matthew Johnson, born on the same day. How was it possible Michael had never heard of this uncle? Among the papers, he found newspaper clippings from 6 years ago. The headline spoke of a car accident that had resulted in the disappearance of a man named Matthew Johnson. The case had been investigated by the police, but the body was never found and Matthew was declared dead. But the letter Michael had just read was clearly written after the accident. The date on the envelope showed it had been written just 5 years ago, a year after the supposed accident that had led to Matthew's death. "My uncle is alive," Michael murmured, piecing it all together. Buddy moved closer and rested his head on Michael's lap, as if confirming the discovery. The dog finally seemed at peace, as if someone had finally understood what he had been trying to communicate all this time. Michael looked again at the photo of his parents he had taken from the shelf. Now that he knew about Matthew, he could clearly see that the fragment of a person in the corner of the image was his uncle. The photo had been deliberately cut to hide Matthew's presence. Everything was starting to make sense. Buddy had recognized Matthew in the photograph because, even though only partially visible, his real owner was there in the picture. The dog's strange behavior was a mix of longing, recognition, and an attempt to communicate the truth about Matthew to Michael, but many questions still remained unanswered. Why had Matthew faked his own death? Why had Robert never mentioned the existence of his twin brother? And most importantly, did Robert's disappearance have something to do with Matthew? Michael decided he couldn't wait until the weekend to talk to Sarah. He picked up the phone and called Boston again. "Mom, I found a box with Uncle Matthew's things. I need to know the truth now." Sarah stayed silent for several seconds before answering. "How did you find that box, Michael?" "Buddy showed me where it was." "Mom, why did you never tell me Dad had a twin brother?" "Because Matthew was dead, son," Sarah answered, her voice trembling. "At least, that's what everyone believed. But he didn't die in the accident, did he? I found a letter he wrote after the accident's date. Matthew is alive, and he gave Buddy to Dad to take care of." Michael heard Sarah start to cry on the other end of the line. "Son, you don't understand how complicated this is. Matthew didn't die in the accident, but he had to disappear. There were dangerous people after him, and faking his death was the only way to protect the family." "What dangerous people, Mom?" "Matthew got involved with the wrong crowd years ago, Michael. He owed money to people who don't forgive debts. The accident was staged so they'd stop looking for him. Your father helped Matthew disappear and promised to take care of Buddy until it was safe for Matthew to return. And Dad's disappearance? Does it have something to do with Matthew?" Sarah cried harder before answering. "Your father disappeared because he found out the people looking for Matthew had discovered a clue that he was still alive. Robert received threats and decided he also had to disappear to protect you and me." Michael felt the world spinning around him. His family was caught up in a situation far more complex and dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Robert hadn't just vanished, he'd been forced to flee to protect them. "Where is Dad now, Mum?" "I don't know, son," Sarah sobbed. "He said he'd reach out when it was safe, but that was 2 years ago. I don't know if he's okay, if he's alive. I don't know anything." Michael looked at Buddy, who seemed to understand the gravity of the conversation. The dog was lying beside the box of photographs, a sad look in his brown eyes. "Mom, what if Buddy can help us find Dad?" The dog clearly understands much more about this situation than we realize. "What do you mean, Michael?" "Buddy's been trying to tell me this story for months through his behavior around the photo. Maybe he knows where to find Matthew or Dad. Dogs have instincts we don't." Sarah grew thoughtful for a moment. "Maybe you're right. Matthew always said Buddy was special, that he could find people even after being separated from them for a long time." "Then that's it, Mom. I'll use Buddy to try to find Dad and Matthew. If they're hiding somewhere, maybe the dog can track them down." "Michael, this could be dangerous. If the people looking for Matthew find out you're investigating, you could be in danger too." "Mom, I can't keep living without knowing what happened to Dad, and Buddy deserves to see Matthew again. I'll start investigating with the information from this box." After hanging up, Michael spent hours examining all the documents and photographs he'd found. There were old addresses for Matthew, names of friends, places he used to go. It was a map of his uncle's life, one that could serve as a starting point for his search. One of the photographs showed Matthew and Buddy in a square that Michael recognized. It was Central Park, not too far from where he lived. If Matthew was still in New York City, maybe he frequented places with emotional connections from his past. "What do you think, Buddy? Should we take a walk in the park tomorrow to see if you recognize anything?" Michael asked the dog. Buddy immediately stood up and wagged his tail. It was the first time in months that Michael had seen the animal show real enthusiasm. It was as if Buddy understood they were finally going to do something to find Matthew. Michael decided to create a systematic plan. He would visit all the places mentioned in Matthew's documents, always accompanied by Buddy. If the dog had any specific reaction at a particular spot, it might indicate Matthew had been there recently. The next morning, Michael packed a bag with water, some photos of Matthew, and documents that might be useful. Buddy seemed anxious, pacing around the house as if he knew something important was about to happen. Their first stop was Central Park. As soon as they arrived, Buddy began showing signs of recognition. The dog guided Michael along specific paths, stopping at certain benches and sniffing particular trees with keen interest. "You remember this place, don't you?" Michael said, watching Buddy's behavior. The dog led him to a bench near the park's lake. There, Buddy sat and looked around as if waiting for someone to appear. Michael examined the area but saw nothing unusual. Then he noticed something discreetly carved into the back of the bench. It was initials, MJ+B, Matthew Johnson and Buddy. His uncle had marked that spot as special for him and the dog. Michael decided to wait there for a few hours, hoping Matthew might show up if he still visited the place. Buddy remained alert, watching every person who passed through the park. Every now and then, the dog would stand up as if recognizing someone, but he always sat back down, seemingly disappointed. After 3 hours with no sign of Matthew, Michael decided to try the next address on the list. It was a diner in Hope Valley that appeared in several photos with Matthew. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot for those of us just starting out. Now, Continuing. When they arrived at the diner, Michael showed a photograph of Matthew to the owner, a man around 60 with a graying mustache. "Sorry to bother you, but do you recognize this person?" Michael asked, handing over the photo. The man studied the image carefully and his face lit up. "Of course I know Matthew. He used to come here almost every day a few years back, but it's been a while since I've seen him. Must be 2 years or more." "Do you remember the last time he was here?" "I do," the diner owner reflected. "It was on a Thursday afternoon. He seemed really nervous, looking around the whole time. He ordered a sandwich to go and said he might not be back for a while." "Did he say anything specific? Mention where he was going?" "Not exactly, but he did say something about finding a safe place for him and his brother. Said he had family responsibilities to take care of." Michael felt his heart race. Matthew had mentioned Robert the last time he was at the diner. That confirmed the two brothers had been in contact when Robert disappeared. "Would you happen to know if Matthew had any particular place he liked to go? An address or neighborhood he mentioned?" "He talked a lot about a farmhouse in Westchester," the man replied. "Said it was the most peaceful place he knew, where he could think clearly. I don't know the exact address, but it mentioned being near a dirt road with a beautiful view of the mountains." Buddy, who had stayed quiet during the conversation, began to stir when the diner owner mentioned the farm. The dog looked straight at Michael as if confirming that the information was important. Michael thanked the man and left the diner with a new lead. Westchester was a town near New York City, known for its farms and country houses that served as a refuge for those wanting to escape the hustle and bustle of the capital. If Matthew and Robert were hiding together, a secluded farm would be the perfect place. The problem was that Westchester had dozens of rural properties spread over a large area. Finding the specific farm without more information would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Michael decided to go back home and search online for properties in Westchester that matched the description given by the diner owner. Maybe he could find some reference that would help narrow down the options. On the way back, Buddy remained restless in the back seat of the car. The dog kept his head out the window, as if trying to catch a familiar scent in the air. At home, Michael spent hours researching farms in Westchester online. He found dozens of properties available for temporary rent, many located on dirt roads with mountain views. It was impossible to determine which one Matthew might be using. Then Michael had an idea. He went through the documents from the box again, looking for any reference to the Westchester area. Among the papers, he found an old receipt from a gas station located on the road leading to Westchester. The receipt was from 2 years ago, right around the time Robert disappeared. "Buddy, we're going on a trip," Michael said to the dog. The next morning, Michael prepared the car for the drive to Westchester. He packed water, food, photos of Matthew and Robert, and all the documents that might be relevant. Buddy seemed to understand they were embarking on an important journey, staying alert and focused. The trip to Westchester took about an hour. Michael started on the main road and then took the side roads leading to the rural properties. Buddy watched intently out the window, sniffing the air whenever Michael slowed down. They stopped at the gas station where Matthew had made a purchase 2 years earlier. The young attendant working there said he didn't remember Matthew but suggested Michael talk to old Jack, the owner who had worked there for over 10 years. Old Jack was a man around 50, with calloused hands and a warm smile. When Michael showed him the photo of Matthew, the man immediately recognized him. "I remember that young man well," old Jack said. "He came here a few times about 2 years ago. Always very polite, paid in cash and asked about the roads in the area. Said he was looking for a quiet place to rent." "Do you know which direction he took when he left here?" "He always took the mountain road, the one that leads to the more isolated farms. I remember once he specifically asked about High Ridge Road, which goes to the most remote properties." Michael thanked him for the information and headed in the direction old Jack had indicated. High Ridge Road was a narrow dirt path winding through wooded hills. There were several entrances to private properties along the way. Buddy was visibly excited. The dog wouldn't stop sniffing the air and occasionally made low sounds, as if recognizing something familiar in the area. After driving for about 20 minutes on the dirt road, Michael saw an entrance with a simple wooden gate. There was no sign or identification, but Buddy started barking as soon as the car approached the spot. "Is this it, Buddy?" Michael asked, stopping the car. The dog jumped from the back seat to the front, clearly eager to get out of the vehicle. Michael had never seen Buddy so excited since he'd known him. Michael parked the car by the side of the road and walked to the gate with Buddy. The dog immediately began sniffing the ground around the entrance, making sounds of recognition. The property seemed well kept, with a simple house visible at the end of a path about 200 yards away. There were fruit trees around the house and a clear view of the mountains in the background, just as the diner owner had described. Michael hesitated before entering the property. If Matthew and Robert were really there, they had serious reasons to hide. Showing up unannounced could scare them or even put them in danger if someone was following them. But Buddy showed no hesitation. The dog nudged the gate open with his nose and began walking determinedly toward the house. Michael decided to follow the animal's instinct. As they approached the house, Michael could see signs that the place was inhabited. There were clothes drying on a line, an old car parked beside the building, and smoke rising from the chimney. Buddy started running toward the house, barking for only the second time since Michael had known him. The dog clearly recognized the place and the people inside. The front door of the house opened, and a man appeared on the porch. Michael recognized him immediately. It was his father, Robert Johnson. But the man looked thinner, with grayer hair and a beard he hadn't had before disappearing. "Michael?" Robert asked, disbelief in his voice. "What are you doing here?" Before Michael could answer, Buddy ran up to the porch and began jumping happily around Robert. The dog was clearly overjoyed to be reunited with the person who had cared for him for years. "Dad," Michael called out, running toward the house. Father and son embraced emotionally on the porch as Buddy circled around them, barking with joy. These were the first truly happy barks Michael had ever heard from the dog. "How did you find me?" Robert asked, tears in his eyes. "Buddy helped me," Michael replied. "He'd been trying to tell me the truth for months through his behavior when he saw your photo with Matthew. When I found the box with my uncle's things, everything started to make sense." "You know about Matthew?" Robert asked, surprised. "I know some things. I know he's your twin brother, that he faked his own death to escape dangerous people, and that Buddy was his before he came to our family." At that moment, another man appeared in the doorway. Michael recognized him immediately. It was Matthew, identical to Robert but with slightly different features, the man he'd seen in the photos from the box. "Buddy!" Matthew exclaimed, and the dog immediately ran to him. The reunion between Matthew and Buddy was even more emotional than Michael's with Robert. The dog leaped into Matthew's arms, licking his face and making sounds of pure joy. It was clear the two shared a deep bond. "Matthew, this is Michael, my son," Robert introduced. "I figured," Matthew replied, still holding Buddy. "You look a lot like your father when he was young, and I see you managed to figure out the signals Buddy's been trying to send." "Why didn't you reach out?" Michael asked. "Mom's been desperate for 2 years, not knowing if you were alive, Dad." Robert took a deep breath before answering. "Son, the situation is much more complicated than you imagine. The people looking for Matthew found out he was alive and started pressuring our family for information. I had to disappear to protect you and your mother." "But who are these people? What did Matthew do that was so serious?" Matthew and Robert exchanged glances before Matthew answered. "Michael, many years ago I got involved with people who lend money at extremely high interest rates. When I couldn't pay, they started threatening my whole family. Faking my own death was the only way to make them stop coming after you. And it worked for a few years," Robert continued. "But then they found out Matthew was alive and started threatening our family again. I got warnings that something bad could happen to you or Sarah if I didn't turn Matthew over to them." Michael felt a mix of anger and understanding. His parents had tried to protect him, but at the same time, they had made decisions that caused a lot of suffering for the family. "And now?" Michael asked. "Are you just going to stay hidden forever?" "We've been trying to find a way to settle this," Matthew replied. "We've already saved up a good portion of the money I owed by selling some properties and doing odd jobs around here. The hope is to pay off the debt and negotiate an agreement." "How much is left?" Michael asked directly. "About 50,000 reais, Robert answered. "It's a lot of money, but we're getting there slowly." Michael thought quickly. He had his work savings, which added up to about 20,000 reais. It wasn't enough to solve the whole problem, but it could help significantly. "I have 20,000 saved up," Michael offered. "It's not everything, but it's a start." Matthew and Robert were moved by the young man's offer. "Michael, we can't take your money," Robert said. "You worked hard to save that." "Dad, you're my family. I'm not going to stand by while you suffer over something that can be fixed with money. Besides, Buddy deserves to have his family together." As if understanding the conversation, Buddy positioned himself between Matthew and Robert, looking back and forth at the two men he clearly loved. "We have to figure out a way to get the other 30,000, Michael said. "It can't be that hard. You can keep working here, and I can pick up extra jobs in New York City." "The problem isn't just the money," Matthew explained. "These people aren't trustworthy. Even if we pay off the debt, there's no guarantee they'll leave us alone." "Then we have to be smart about how we do it," Michael reflected. "We need some way to make sure that after paying, you'll be safe for good." The three men spent the rest of the afternoon discussing possible strategies. Matthew gave more details about the people involved and the threats the family had received. It was a delicate situation that required caution and planning. Buddy stayed close to Matthew the whole time, as if trying to make up for the years apart. The dog was visibly happier and more relaxed than Michael had ever seen him. That night, Michael called Sarah and told her he had found Robert and Matthew. The conversation was emotional, with Sarah crying in relief to hear that Robert was okay. "Can I talk to him?" Sarah asked. Michael handed the phone to Robert, who spoke at length with his wife. It was a conversation full of tears, apologies, and declarations of love. Sarah agreed to keep their location a secret until the situation was resolved. In the following days, Michael began splitting his time between New York City and the farm in Westchester. He spent his mornings working on design projects at home and his afternoons with Robert and Matthew, helping with farm work and planning how to resolve the financial situation. Buddy was clearly happy with the new arrangements. The dog accompanied Michael on trips between the two homes, showing joy both in New York City and at the farm. It was as if he had finally managed to bring together all the important people in his life. Matthew revealed more details about his past to Michael. He had worked as a small-scale construction contractor until he got involved with people who offered quick loans to those in need of working capital. What began as a legitimate need for money for a project turned into a spiral of compounding interest that became impossible to pay. "Naivety was my downfall," Matthew explained. "I thought I could pay it back quickly, but the interest kept growing every month, and soon I owed more than I had originally borrowed." "Why didn't you seek help before things got this bad?" Michael asked. "Because those people made it clear that involving the police or other institutions would have serious consequences for the family," Robert replied. "They knew where we lived, our routines, where Sarah worked. It was a real and constant threat." Michael began to understand the complexity of the situation. It wasn't just about money, it was about family safety. Any solution would need to ensure long-term protection for the family. A week after finding Robert and Matthew, Michael had an idea. He spoke with Mrs. Jenkins, who had mentioned knowing influential people in the area due to her many years in the neighborhood. "Mrs. Jenkins, do you know any lawyers or people who handle conflict mediation?" Michael asked during a visit. "I do, dear. Why do you ask?" Michael decided to trust his neighbor and shared a brief version of the situation without revealing Robert and Matthew's current location. "I see," Mrs. Jenkins said thoughtfully. "I know a lawyer who specializes in debt cases and financial mediation. He has experience negotiating with, let's say, unconventional people. Do you think he could help?" "I think it's worth talking to him. Dr. William has always been very discreet and effective in delicate cases. I can set up a meeting for you." The next day, Michael was in the office of Dr. William Parker, a man in his 50s with a trustworthy appearance and calm demeanor. Michael explained the family's situation, emphasizing the need for a solution that ensured permanent safety for everyone involved. "This kind of situation is more common than you think," Dr. Williams said. "There are legal ways to mediate these conflicts, even when dealing with people who operate outside traditional laws." "How so?" "We can arrange a mediation meeting where all parties gather in a neutral setting with witnesses present to establish a formal agreement. Once the money is paid and the agreement is documented, it becomes much harder for these lenders to keep harassing your family. And they'd agree to something like that? Surprisingly, yes. These people also want to resolve the situation and get the money they're owed. They prefer a definitive solution over endlessly chasing people who may not be able to pay. Michael felt a wave of hope. Finally, there was a real possibility of resolving the situation permanently and safely. "What's the next step?" Michael asked. "First, we need to contact the lenders and propose mediation." "Could you make that initial contact or get their information through Matthew?" Michael explained that he would need to speak with Matthew and Robert before taking any steps. Dr. William agreed and said he would wait for their response with the necessary details. That afternoon, Michael drove to the property in Westchester to discuss the mediation proposal with Robert and Matthew. Buddy, as always, was excited during the trip, knowing he would see Matthew again. When Michael explained the lawyer's proposal, Matthew initially resisted. "Michael, you don't know these people like I do. They're not trustworthy. Even with a lawyer present, we have no guarantee they'll honor an agreement." "But Uncle, hiding won't guarantee anything either," Michael argued. "At least this way, we'd have a real chance to resolve everything for good." Robert supported Michael's idea. "Matthew, we can't keep running forever. Sarah is suffering, Michael is sacrificing to help, and you're away from Buddy. We have to try for a permanent solution." The conversation lasted hours, with Matthew voicing his concerns while Robert and Michael presented arguments for mediation. Buddy stayed close to Matthew throughout the discussion, as if offering emotional support to his true owner. Finally, Matthew agreed to try mediation, but with specific conditions. The meeting would have to take place in a public place, with multiple witnesses present, and all parties would have to sign legally binding documents. "All right," Matthew said, "we'll try, but if anything goes wrong, if I sense even a hint of threat, I'm leaving immediately." Michael felt relieved. At last, they had a concrete plan to resolve the situation. He drove back to New York City that night with a sense that they were nearing a real solution. In the following days, Dr. William contacted Matthew's creditors. Surprisingly, they showed interest in the mediation proposal. They wanted the money owed to them and were willing to discuss a formal agreement. The meeting was scheduled for a week later at a neutral hotel in downtown New York City. Present would be Matthew, a representative of the creditors, Dr. William, and 2 independent witnesses. Robert would stay nearby but wouldn't attend directly to avoid complications. Michael spent that week nervous but optimistic. He had managed to gather his $20,000 in savings, and Robert and Matthew had pooled another $25,000 from selling personal items and working on the property. They were still $5,000 short, but hoped to negotiate installment payments for the difference. Buddy seemed to sense the tension in the air. The dog was more restless than usual, following Michael around the house and showing signs of anxiety whenever the young man prepared to leave. The night before the meeting, Michael stayed at the property with Robert and Matthew. The 3 men went over every detail of the plan, considering all possible scenarios. "If anything goes wrong tomorrow," Matthew said, "I want you both to know how much I appreciate everything you've done to help me, especially you, Michael. You had no obligation to get involved in this mess." "Uncle, you're family," Michael replied, "and Buddy would never forgive me if I didn't do everything to reunite you for good." The dog, lying between the 3 men, lifted his head when he heard his name, as if aware he was being discussed. On the morning of the meeting, Michael woke early and prepared all the necessary documents. Robert would stay at the property with Buddy, while Matthew and Michael would go to New York City to meet Dr. William. "Take good care of Buddy," Matthew told Robert before leaving. "If anything happens to me today, he's your responsibility." "Nothing will happen," Robert replied firmly. "We'll settle this once and for all." Buddy seemed to understand something important was going on. The dog followed Matthew and Michael to the car, but when Matthew made a move to get in, Buddy began barking insistently. "What is it, Buddy?" Matthew asked, kneeling beside the dog. The animal looked straight into Matthew's eyes and placed his paw on the man's arm, as if trying to stop him from leaving. "He's worried," Michael observed. "Maybe we should take him with us." "No," said Matthew. "The meeting might get tense, and I don't want to expose Buddy to that. He stays here with Robert where he's safe. Matthew hugged Buddy for a long moment before getting into the car. The dog kept barking as they drove away, showing an anxiety Michael had never seen before. The trip to New York City was quiet, with Matthew visibly nervous and Michael trying to keep the mood optimistic. When they arrived at Dr. William Parker's office, the lawyer greeted them with confidence. "Everything's ready," Dr. William said. "The meeting will be in the lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a public space with plenty of people around. I have 2 confirmed witnesses and all the documents prepared for signing." The group headed to the hotel, located in a busy downtown area. The lobby was spacious and bustling, with executives, tourists, and others constantly moving about. It was the perfect setting for a meeting that needed to be public, yet discreet. At 2 in the afternoon, the creditor's representative arrived. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed and respectable-looking, nothing like the intimidating stereotype Michael had imagined. "Mr. Matthew," the man introduced himself, "I'm Richard Williams, representing the group of investors who lent you money years ago." The meeting began cordially, with Dr. William explaining the proposed terms of the agreement. Matthew offered $45,000 as full payment of the debt, including all accumulated interest. In return, the creditors would sign a document waiving any future claims and agreeing never to bother Matthew or his family again. "The amount meets our expectations," Richard said, "but we have one additional condition." "What condition?" asked Dr. William. "We want Matthew to sign a document pledging never to take loans from unofficial institutions again. It's a guarantee this situation won't repeat in the future." Matthew agreed without hesitation. It was a reasonable demand, one he already intended to follow regardless of the agreement. The documents were signed by all parties, with the 2 witnesses confirming the legal validity of the deal. Richard took the money, discreetly counted the bills, and confirmed everything was correct. "From now on, we consider this matter closed," Richard said, shaking Matthew's hand. "You can return to your normal life without any further concern from us." The meeting ended without incident. Matthew looked visibly relieved, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Michael felt proud to have helped arrange a solution that benefited the whole family. "We did it, Matthew," said Dr. William. "You're officially free of this situation." On the drive back to Westchester, Matthew was more talkative and optimistic than Michael had ever seen him. For the first time in years, he could plan a future without fear of retaliation or threats. "Michael, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done," Matthew said. "You didn't just help me resolve the financial mess, you brought me back to my family." "Uncle, it was Buddy who did everything," Michael replied. "He's the one who showed me there was a story to uncover. He's the one who led me to you. I just followed the clues he'd been trying to give me for months." When they arrived at the farm, Robert was waiting anxiously on the porch. Buddy ran toward the car as soon as he heard the engine, barking joyfully at the sight of Matthew and Michael returning. "How did it go?" Robert asked immediately. "Everything worked out," Matthew answered, hugging his brother. "We're free. We can go home." The conversation that followed was emotional, with Matthew recounting every detail of the meeting and Robert expressing relief that he could finally return to his normal life. Buddy circled the 3 men, clearly happy to have his whole family together and safe. "Let's call Sarah," Robert suggested. "She needs to know she can come home too." The call to Sarah was filled with tears of joy. She had suffered for 2 years, not knowing if Robert was alive and safe. Learning they could finally reunite as a family was some of the best news she'd ever received. "When are you coming back to New York City?" Sarah asked during the call. "Tomorrow," Robert answered. "We can't stand another day away from home." That evening, the 3 men and Buddy celebrated the resolution of their ordeal. Matthew cooked a special meal, Robert opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for a special occasion, and Michael felt grateful for having reunited his family. Buddy was clearly overjoyed, playing with an energy Michael had never seen in him before. The dog ran around the farm's yard, barking occasionally, something that had become common since Matthew had returned to his life. "You know, Michael," Matthew said as they watched Buddy play, "this dog saved our family. If he hadn't shown you there was a hidden story, we'd probably still be running forever." "Buddy's always been special," Robert agreed. "From the very first day you brought him home, he showed extraordinary intelligence. Actually, Matthew revealed. "Buddy isn't just any dog. He was trained as a search and rescue dog before I adopted him. That's why he's so skilled at finding people and communicating information." Michael looked at Buddy with renewed admiration. The dog didn't just have sharp instincts, he had professional training that explained his ability to guide Michael to the truth about their family. The next morning, they packed up to return to New York City. Matthew decided to stay at the farm a few more days to wrap up some work commitments in the area, but Robert and Michael would head back immediately to prepare the house for Sarah's return. Buddy was torn between going with Robert and Michael or staying with Matthew. Finally, Matthew suggested the dog go with Robert and Michael, and that he'd join them in New York City by the end of the week. "Take good care of Buddy," Matthew said, hugging the dog. "In a few days, we'll all be together again, this time for good." The return to New York City was filled with joy and anticipation. Robert was eager to see Sarah again and resume their life together after 2 years of forced separation. Michael was happy to finally have his family whole and complete. Buddy seemed perfectly content during the trip, alternating between looking out the window and watching Robert and Michael. It was as if the dog knew they were going home for good, with no more need for running or hiding. When they arrived at the house in Hope Valley, everything looked exactly as Robert had left it 2 years before. Michael had kept the property well maintained, but now it would once again be filled with the presence of the whole family. Sarah arrived from Boston the following afternoon. The reunion between her and Robert was incredibly emotional, with both of them crying and embracing for long minutes in the living room. Buddy watched the scene from his favorite spot, near the shelf where the family photograph was displayed. "Buddy, you brought our family back," said Sarah, kneeling to pet the dog. "If it weren't for you, we might never have found out where Robert was." In the days that followed, the house returned to the familiar routine that had been interrupted 2 years earlier. Robert resumed his work projects, Sarah went back to caring for the house with her usual tenderness, and Michael continued with his design work, but now with the peace of mind of having his family reunited. Matthew arrived from Westchester at the end of the week, finally putting an end to the period of separation and secrets. He decided to look for his own apartment in the area, to stay close to the family while maintaining his independence. "I don't want to be a burden to you anymore," said Matthew. "I've already caused enough trouble for this family." "Uncle, you were never a burden," Michael replied. "We're a family, and families help each other. Besides, Buddy won't accept you living far from him again." As for Buddy, the dog was radiant. He had succeeded in his mission to bring together all the people he loved. The animal now divided his time between Robert and Sarah's house and Matthew's new apartment, but he always returned to sleep in the house in Hope Valley, where it all began. Buddy's behavior in front of the photograph on the shelf had also completely changed. Instead of showing agitation and melancholy, he now stood calmly before the image, as if satisfied to have finally told the story the photo represented. Michael began to understand that Buddy had spent years trying to communicate the truth about Matthew through signs no one had understood. The dog knew Matthew was alive, knew Robert had secrets, and knew the family had been unnecessarily separated. A few weeks after the family reunion, Michael decided to frame the original photograph of Robert, Sarah, and Matthew, without the cut that had hidden Matthew's presence. The complete image now held a place of honor on the living room shelf. Buddy observed the change with clear approval. The dog stood in front of the new photograph and let out a low, satisfied bark, as if signaling that the truth was finally being displayed openly. "Now it's complete," said Michael, watching Buddy's reaction. "No more secrets, no more half-truths." The Johnson family settled into a new routine, richer and more complete than before. Robert and Sarah resumed their life as a couple, now with the maturity of those who had faced hardships and overcome them. Matthew found work as a consultant for small construction projects, using his experience honestly and transparently. Michael kept developing his design work, but now with the emotional peace of having a stable, united family. He also began working on a special project, a blog about the intelligence and loyalty of dogs, inspired by his experience with Buddy. The dog became a minor local celebrity. Neighbors who knew the Johnson family's story were amazed by Buddy's ability to bring separated people back together. Mrs. Jenkins always remarked that she had never seen such an intelligent and loyal animal. "That dog deserves a medal," she told anyone who would listen. "He saved an entire family." Matthew established a routine of walking Buddy every morning in Central Park, the same place they used to go before their separation. The dog showed obvious joy during these walks, running along paths he had known since he was a puppy. "You never forgot me, did you, Buddy?" Matthew used to say during their walks. "Even after years apart, you remembered me." Buddy's behavior confirmed Matthew's observation. The dog responded to his name when Matthew called him, obeyed specific commands only Matthew knew, and showed special affection whenever they were together. Michael began documenting the family's story in writing and photographs. He wanted to preserve the memory of how Buddy had been instrumental in reuniting the family, creating a record that could be passed down to future generations. "This story needs to be told," Michael said to Matthew. "People should know how a dog can be so loyal and intelligent that it saves an entire family." Michael's decision to create a blog about canine intelligence ended up becoming a bigger project than he had initially imagined. He started receiving messages from people who had similar stories about dogs demonstrating extraordinary abilities. One of the most touching stories came from an elderly woman in Westchester, who wrote about how her dog had found her lost grandson on a crowded beach. Another message told of a dog that had alerted a family to a gas leak that could have caused a tragedy. "Buddy isn't the only special dog," Michael remarked to the family. "It seems many dogs have abilities we underestimate." Sarah suggested Michael turn the blog into a platform where people could share real stories about dogs' intelligence and loyalty. The idea evolved into a community project connecting dog owners with extraordinary experiences. Matthew contributed to the project by sharing training techniques he had learned with Buddy. He explained how certain exercises could improve communication between humans and dogs. "The key is paying attention to the signals," Matthew wrote in the blog articles. "Dogs are constantly communicating with us, but we need to learn to interpret what they're trying to say." Robert also participated in the project, documenting Buddy's daily routine and observing specific behaviors that demonstrated the dog's intelligence. He noticed Buddy responded differently to certain situations, always showing a sharp understanding of his surroundings. The blog project grew organically, attracting the attention of veterinarians, dog trainers, and researchers interested in animal behavior. Michael began receiving invitations to speak about the Johnson family's experience at local pet events, but Michael always made sure to clarify that the real hero of the story was Buddy. The dog had demonstrated perseverance, intelligence, and loyalty in a way few humans could match. "Buddy never gave up trying to bring us together," Michael explained in his talks. "Even when no one understood what he was trying to communicate, he kept insisting until someone paid attention to the signs." The Johnson family also became an example in their local community of how complex problems could be solved through communication, planning, and mutual support. The story of how they overcame their debt and threats inspired other families facing similar hardships. Dr. William, the lawyer who had mediated the agreement, began using their case as an example in his conflict resolution consultations. He showed other clients that even seemingly hopeless situations could be resolved through well-structured negotiation. "The secret is finding a solution that benefits everyone," Dr. William explained. In the Johnson family's case, the creditors got the money they wanted, and the family gained the peace they needed. Months after the family reunion, Michael threw a special birthday party for Buddy. It was a way to celebrate not just the dog's birthday, but also the key role he had played in bringing the family back together. The party took place in the backyard of their home in Hope Valley, with the entire Johnson family present, along with Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. William Parker, and some neighbors who had followed their story from the beginning. Buddy received new toys, a special bed, and a party with a cake made just for dogs. "Today we celebrate the smartest and most loyal dog in the world," said Michael during the party. "Buddy didn't just reunite our family, he also taught us about perseverance and the importance of communication." At the party, Buddy was full of joy and energy, playing with everyone and showing off tricks he had learned with Matthew over the years. It was clear the dog was happy and content with his life, surrounded by all the people he loved. Matthew gave an emotional speech about Buddy's importance in his life. "This dog saved me in a way that goes far beyond just bringing our family back together," he said. "Buddy taught me about loyalty, unconditional love, and never giving up on the people we care about." Sarah also spoke about how Buddy had been a symbol of hope during the 2 hardest years of her life. "When Robert disappeared, Buddy was all I had to remind me that our family still existed," she said. "Taking care of him was like taking care of a part of Robert that was still with me." Robert thanked Buddy for leading Michael to him and Matthew in Westchester. "If it weren't for the signs Buddy gave Michael, we might still be hidden away, separated and suffering," Robert said. "This dog literally saved our family." The party marked a new chapter in the Johnson family's life. They had overcome significant hardships and could now focus on building a stable, positive future. Buddy would remain at the heart of the family, not just as a pet, but as the one who had made their reunion possible. In the months that followed, the family settled into a happy, healthy routine. Robert fully resumed his professional work. Sarah returned to part-time work at a local shop, and Matthew started his own construction consulting business. Michael continued developing his blog, which became a regional resource on canine intelligence and inspiring dog stories. He also began offering graphic design services to animal welfare organizations, contributing to causes that helped dogs in need. Buddy kept his routine, splitting time between the Johnsons' main house and Matthew's apartment. The dog had developed his own schedule: mornings with Matthew at the park, afternoons with Robert and Sarah at home, and nights sleeping in his favorite spot in the living room, near the shelf where the family's portrait was displayed. Buddy's behavior around the portrait had become a quiet, daily ritual. Every morning before his walk with Matthew, the dog would stand in front of the photo for a few minutes, as if checking that every family member was safe and accounted for. "He's still watching over us," Michael observed, "like he's responsible for keeping us all together." This remark turned out to be prophetic a few months later, when the family faced a new situation that required Buddy's special intervention. Sarah had begun experiencing frequent back pain and trouble moving. Doctors initially attributed her symptoms to stress from the past years, but Buddy started acting differently around her. The dog, who usually greeted Sarah with excitement when she came home, began approaching her more carefully and protectively. Buddy would stay close to Sarah when she sat down, positioning himself so she could lean on him if needed. "Buddy is acting like he knows something's wrong with me," Sarah commented to Robert. Sarah's observation turned out to be correct. During a more detailed medical examination, the doctors discovered that Sarah had developed a spinal condition that required specialized treatment and intensive physical therapy. "It's amazing how the dog noticed before we did," the doctor said during the appointment. "Dogs have an exceptional ability to detect changes in the health of the people they live with." During Sarah's treatment, Buddy became her unofficial assistant. The dog would accompany her during physical therapy exercises at home, stay close when she needed to rest, and even helped by alerting other family members when Sarah needed assistance. "Buddy has turned into my personal nurse," Sarah joked during her recovery. Sarah's treatment lasted about 6 months, and throughout that time, Buddy showed exceptional dedication to her care. The dog seemed to intuitively understand when Sarah was in pain and when she was feeling better. Matthew, who visited Sarah daily during her recovery, was amazed by Buddy's ability to adapt his behavior to the specific needs of each situation. "This dog has an emotional sensitivity that surpasses many humans," Matthew observed. "He didn't just bring our family together, now he's taking care of her health." Sarah's full recovery was cause for another celebration in the Johnson family. They organized a small gratitude party where Buddy received special recognition for his care during her treatment. "Buddy has proven once again that he's the most special member of our family," Sarah said during the party. "He didn't just reunite us, he also took care of me when I needed it most." The experience with Sarah's recovery strengthened the bond between Buddy and every member of the family even more. The dog had shown that his role went far beyond being a pet. He was truly a guardian of the Johnson family. Michael decided to document this new chapter of Buddy's story on the blog as well. The dog's ability to detect health issues and provide specific care during Sarah's recovery caught the attention of medical professionals interested in animal-assisted therapy. "Buddy is becoming a case study," Michael remarked. "He demonstrates abilities that go far beyond what we consider normal for dogs." Michael's blog began receiving visits from researchers, veterinarians, and therapists interested in better understanding the extraordinary abilities Buddy had shown. Some suggested the dog participate in studies on canine intelligence and animal-assisted therapy. But the Johnson family decided Buddy had already contributed enough to science through his actions with the family. They preferred the dog continue living a normal, happy life surrounded by the people he loved. "Buddy deserves to enjoy his life without becoming a research subject," Matthew said. "He's already done his part to show the world what dogs are capable of." The family's decision was respected by the researchers, but Buddy's story continued to inspire those working in canine training and therapy. Michael's blog became a reference for anyone wanting to better understand the communication between humans and dogs. 2 years after the family's reunion, Michael decided to write a book telling the whole story of Buddy and the Johnson family. The project would be a way to permanently preserve the memory of the extraordinary experiences they had shared together. "This story needs to be told in full," Michael explained to the family. "Future generations should know how a dog can completely transform a family's life." The book took 6 months to write, with contributions from every member of the Johnson family. Each person shared their own memories and perspectives on the events they had lived through. Sarah wrote about the anguish of those 2 years without Robert and how Buddy had been her only connection to her missing husband. Robert described the feelings of isolation while hiding at the farm and how reuniting with Buddy had been a moment of pure joy. Matthew added details about his special bond with Buddy and how the dog had motivated him to keep fighting during the toughest times. Michael documented the entire process of uncovering the truth and how Buddy had guided every step of the investigation. The book was published by an independent press specializing in inspiring stories. Though it didn't become a national bestseller, it found its audience among people interested in true stories about animal intelligence and the importance of family bonds. Several local bookstores hosted signing events where Michael shared Buddy's story with captivated audiences. Buddy always attended these events, receiving affection and admiration from the crowd. "It's moving to see how people connect with Buddy's story," Michael would say after the presentations. "Everyone has or knows a special dog, and our story brings those memories to life." The book's modest success led to some interesting opportunities for the Johnson family. Michael was invited to speak at schools about the importance of paying attention to the signals animals send, and Matthew began offering workshops on human-canine communication. But the book's greatest impact was on the Johnsons themselves. The process of documenting their experiences helped them fully process everything they had been through and appreciate their bonds even more. "Writing this book made me realize how lucky we are to have Buddy in our lives," Sarah said during an interview with a local paper. "Not every family gets the chance to be saved by such a special dog." 3 years after the family reunion, Buddy began showing signs of aging. He was about 10 years old, entering the senior stage of a dog's life. Though still active and alert, his movements were slower, and he preferred resting more than before. The Johnsons adjusted their routines to accommodate Buddy's needs. Matthew shortened and softened their walks, Robert set up more comfortable resting spots around the house, and Sarah prepared special meals tailored to an older dog's nutritional needs. "Buddy took care of us all these years," Michael said. "Now it's our turn to take care of him the best we can." Michael documented this new phase of Buddy's life on the blog, sharing tips for caring for senior dogs and reflections on pet aging. His posts resonated with many readers going through the same experience with their own dogs. One of the most noticeable changes in Buddy's behavior was that he barked less, partially returning to the quiet nature he'd had before the family reunion. It was as if, having fulfilled his mission to bring everyone together, he could finally relax and enjoy a peaceful old age. But Buddy still kept his routine of observing the family photo on the shelf. Every morning, he would stand in front of it for a few minutes, as if performing a family safety check. "Even in his old age, he still feels responsible for all of us," Robert observed. The family decided to organize a special party for Buddy's 10th birthday. It would be a celebration not just of the dog's age, but of all the years of loyalty, intelligence, and love he had dedicated to the Johnson family. The party took place on a sunny Saturday in the backyard of their home in Hope Valley. Present were all the members of the Johnson family, Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. William, some neighbors who had followed their story, and many people who had come to know Buddy through Michael's blog and book. Buddy, though calmer than in previous celebrations, showed clear satisfaction with all the attention he was receiving. He moved among the guests, accepting affection and greetings, always returning to stay close to Matthew, Robert, Sarah, and Michael. 10 years of an extraordinary dog, Matthew said during a toast. Buddy didn't just live with us, he transformed our lives in ways we never thought possible. Sarah prepared a special speech for the occasion. Buddy came into our lives when Matthew needed a companion, stayed with us when our family fell apart, and was the one who brought us back together. He taught us about loyalty, perseverance, and unconditional love. There's no greater gift than a dog like Buddy. Robert spoke about how Buddy had been his companion during the loneliest times at their farm in Westchester. For the 2 years we spent in hiding, Matthew and I only had each other, but knowing Buddy was safe with Michael and Sarah gave us hope that one day we'd all be together again. Buddy has always been the symbol of our family's unity. Michael gave the final speech of the party. Buddy taught me that communication goes far beyond words. He spent months trying to tell me a story through signs, gestures, and behaviors. When I finally learned to listen to what he was saying, we uncovered a truth that changed all our lives. Buddy proved that love and loyalty can overcome any obstacle. After the speeches, Buddy received special gifts: a new, extra comfortable bed, age-appropriate toys, and a personalized collar with a tag that read, "Buddy Johnson, Family Hero." The most emotional moment of the party came when Buddy, after receiving all his gifts and greetings, walked over to the living room shelf where the family photo was displayed. He stood in front of the picture and let out a soft, contented bark, as if confirming that his mission to protect and reunite the family was still being fulfilled. "Even on his birthday, he's still taking care of us," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. Buddy's 10th birthday party marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Johnson family's life. It was a time of stability, gratitude, and cherishing moments together. They had all learned to value each day, knowing they had overcome challenges that could have permanently broken their bonds. In the months following the party, Buddy continued living a full and happy life, surrounded by everyone he loved. He had fulfilled his extraordinary mission of reuniting a separated family, and could now enjoy his golden years with the peace of knowing he had left a legacy of love and loyalty. The story of Buddy and the Johnson family became a local example of how pets can be much more than companions. They can be true saviors, transforming lives through their intelligence, loyalty, and unconditional love. Michael's blog continued to grow, now focusing on stories of senior dogs and the importance of treasuring every moment with pets. The experience with Buddy had taught the Johnson family that dogs have an extraordinary ability to understand and positively influence human lives. Matthew established a special routine with Buddy, tailored to the needs of the senior dog. They continued their daily walks, but now at a slower pace with more breaks for rest. It was precious time that Matthew knew should be cherished. "Every day with Buddy is a gift," Matthew would say. "He gave me a second chance at life, and now I want to repay him by offering the best quality of life possible." Robert and Sarah also adjusted their routines to include more quality time with Buddy. They set aside specific moments each day to play with the dog, always respecting his physical limitations while ensuring he felt loved and included in all family activities. Michael continued documenting Buddy's life, now focusing on the joys and challenges of caring for an elderly dog. His blog posts helped other dog owners going through the same experience of watching their companions grow older. The Johnson family had learned that Buddy wasn't just extraordinary for bringing the family together. He was extraordinary in every aspect of his personality and behavior. His intelligence, loyalty, and capacity for unconditional love were traits that had profoundly enriched the lives of every family member. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 4 years after the family reunion, the Johnsons had settled into a happy and stable routine. Michael married Jessica, a veterinarian he met during one of his talks on canine intelligence. Jessica immediately fell in love with Buddy and fit perfectly into the family. "I've never seen such a special dog," Jessica said when she met Buddy. "It's clear he has an extraordinary connection with all of you." Jessica brought professional veterinary knowledge that greatly benefited Buddy in his old age. She helped the family establish a preventive care routine that kept the dog healthy and comfortable during his golden years. Michael and Jessica's wedding was celebrated in the backyard of their home in Hope Valley, with Buddy as one of the special groomsmen of the ceremony. The dog, then 11 years old, participated wearing a special bow tie and receiving affection from all the guests. "Buddy deserves to be part of every important moment in our family," Michael said during the ceremony. "He was essential in bringing us to where we are today." Matthew also found new love during this time. He began dating Deborah, a retired teacher he met at one of his workshops on canine communication. Deborah had 2 senior dogs and immediately connected with Buddy's story. "Matthew told me all about your family's journey," Deborah said during her first dinner with the Johnsons. "It's heartwarming to see how one dog can transform so many lives." Deborah and her 2 dogs brought a new, positive dynamic to Matthew's life and, in turn, to the entire Johnson family. Buddy got along well with the other dogs, creating a harmonious bond that further enriched his social life. Robert and Sarah, now in their 60s, decided to slow down their work pace to spend more time with family. They adopted a more relaxed routine, with more time to care for Buddy and enjoy the company of their children and daughters-in-law. "After everything we've been through, we've learned that family time is the most precious gift we have," Sarah said. The family also decided to take a special trip to Westchester, visiting the farm where Robert and Matthew had once hidden. It was a way to revisit the place where Buddy had reunited with the people he loved, turning a place of sadness into one of special memories. Buddy showed immediate recognition when they arrived at the property. Despite his advanced age, the dog explored the grounds with interest, visiting spots where he had played during the family reunion. "He remembers everything," observed Matthew, watching Buddy walk straight to the places they used to spend time together. The trip to Westchester became an annual tradition for the Johnson family. It was a way to celebrate the family reunion and honor the vital role Buddy had played in their lives. The dog always showed special joy during these trips, as if he understood the symbolic meaning of the place. During one of these annual trips, when Buddy was 12, the family realized it would likely be the last time the dog had the energy to make the journey. He was visibly more fragile, though he still showed happiness being with everyone. "Let's cherish every moment of this trip," said Michael. "Buddy deserves us making this a special experience." The family spent 3 days at the property, creating precious memories with Buddy. They had picnics in the yard, took many photos, and spent hours talking while Buddy rested comfortably among them. It was during this trip that Buddy did something that surprised the whole family. On their last night there, the dog walked to the porch where so many important conversations had taken place and let out a sequence of melodic barks, as if giving a speech of gratitude. "It's like he's saying goodbye to this place," said Jessica, with tears in her eyes. Jessica's interpretation proved correct. That was indeed Buddy's last trip to Westchester. In the following months, the dog preferred staying closer to home, enjoying his familiar surroundings and the constant companionship of the Johnson family. But even with the limitations of age, Buddy kept his routine of guarding the family photo on the shelf. Every morning he still positioned himself in front of the picture, though now he remained lying down instead of standing. It was a ritual he wouldn't abandon as long as he had strength. Michael carefully documented Buddy's final months, creating a written and photographic record to preserve the memories of their extraordinary dog forever. He wanted to ensure future generations of the Johnson family knew Buddy's full story. "Buddy deserves to be remembered forever," Michael explained. "He wasn't just our pet, he was the savior of our family." The family organized a special party for Buddy's 13th birthday. It was a quieter celebration than before, focused on the dog's comfort and the family's gratitude for all the years of companionship. Buddy, though more fragile, showed clear delight in the extra attention he received. He was given gifts suited to his needs, an even more comfortable orthopedic bed, soft toys he could easily handle, and plenty of affection from every family member. 13 years of pure love and loyalty, said Matthew during the party. Buddy taught us everything about unconditional love. After the birthday celebration, Buddy lived a few more happy and comfortable months, surrounded by the entire Johnson family. His final days were peaceful, as if he knew he had fulfilled his life's purpose and could rest, leaving behind a legacy of love. Buddy's passing was gentle, happening on a sunny morning as he slept in his favorite bed in the living room, near the shelf with the family photo. It was as if he had chosen to remain, to the very end, in his role as the guardian of the Johnson family. The family was devastated by the loss of Buddy, but also grateful for all the extraordinary years they had shared with him. They organized a special farewell by planting a tree in the backyard of their home in memory of the dog who had transformed their lives. "Buddy will always be with us," said Sarah during the planting ceremony. "He lives in every moment of togetherness our family shares." Michael wrote a final chapter for the book about Buddy, documenting the dog's last years and reflecting on the lasting impact he had on the Johnson family. The text became one of the most moving parts of the book, deeply touching everyone who read it. In the months following Buddy's passing, the Johnson family kept their traditions and routines, always honoring the memory of their extraordinary dog. The photograph on the shelf gained a small additional frame with Buddy's picture, completing the family portrait once and for all. Matthew decided to adopt another dog, not to replace Buddy, which was impossible, but to continue the legacy of love and care for animals that Buddy had inspired. The new dog, named Hope, quickly became part of the family and began learning from the lessons Buddy had left behind. "Buddy taught us how to love a dog the right way," said Matthew. "Now it's our responsibility to pass those lessons on." Michael expanded his work with the blog, creating a special section dedicated to Buddy's memory and the lessons he had taught about canine intelligence, family loyalty, and unconditional love. The section became one of the most visited on the site, inspiring people worldwide. The Johnson family also established a small local foundation in Buddy's memory, offering free veterinary care to low-income families in the area. It was their way of continuing the legacy of love and care that Buddy had represented. "Buddy always looked after those in need," Robert explained during the foundation's inauguration. "Now we'll keep caring for others in his name." Buddy's story continued to be shared in schools, community events, and dog owner gatherings. Michael became a well-known speaker in the region, always sharing the lessons he had learned from his extraordinary dog. 5 years after Buddy's passing, the Johnson family held a special gathering in their backyard near the tree they had planted in his memory. It was their way of celebrating the lasting legacy Buddy had left and renewing their commitment to keeping his story alive. "Buddy brought our family together and taught us about true love," Michael said during the gathering. "His story still inspires people and saves other families through the lessons he left us." The tree planted in Buddy's memory had grown tall and strong, offering shade and beauty to the backyard. It was a living symbol of the growth and transformation Buddy had brought to the Johnson family. Jessica and Michael welcomed their first child, Robert William Johnson, named after his grandfather and the lawyer who had helped the family. The boy grew up hearing stories about Buddy and learning the importance of loving and caring for animals. "Robert William will know Buddy's full story," Jessica said. "He'll grow up understanding how one dog can transform an entire family." Matthew and Deborah married in a simple and touching ceremony, attended by the entire Johnson family and their dogs. During the ceremony, they paid special tribute to Buddy, acknowledging his key role in Matthew's love story. "If Buddy hadn't brought our family together, I never would have met Deborah," Matthew said at the wedding. "Even our love is a result of the magic Buddy brought into our lives." Robert and Sarah became devoted grandparents, always telling their grandson stories about Buddy and teaching him to respect and love animals. The child grew up in a home where Buddy's legacy was present in every corner. The photograph on the living room shelf remained a focal point of the Johnson household. Now it included Buddy's image alongside the complete family, reminding everyone of the extraordinary dog who had made their union possible. 10 years after Buddy's passing, Michael published a second edition of the book about his story, adding chapters about the lasting legacy the dog had left and how his influence continued to impact the Johnson family and the surrounding community. "Buddy's story didn't end when he left us," Michael wrote in the new edition. It lives on in every act of love, in every moment of family unity, and in every life touched by the lessons he left behind. The expanded book found an even larger audience, inspiring families across the country to cherish their pets more and pay attention to the signals they constantly send. Robert, now 70, often sat in the backyard near Buddy's tree, reflecting on everything they had experienced as a family. It was a moment of gratitude for having known such an extraordinary animal. "Buddy taught me that true love has no limits," Robert would say during these reflections. "He loved our family with an intensity few humans could match." Sarah, also in her 70s, kept the tradition of baking special treats on Buddy's birthday. She handed them out to neighborhood dogs, always sharing Buddy's story with new pet owners she met. "Every dog has the potential to be as special as Buddy," Sarah explained. "We just need to learn to listen to what they have to teach us." The small foundation in Buddy's memory had helped hundreds of local families care better for their pets. It was a tangible legacy that perpetuated the love and care Buddy had represented in his lifetime. Matthew, now living a full life with Deborah and their dogs, often visited schools to tell Buddy's story and teach children about the importance of treating animals with love and respect. "Buddy saved me from a life of fear and isolation," Matthew would tell the children. "He taught me that love can overcome any hardship, and that family is the most precious thing we have." Buddy's story became a local legend in Hope Valley. New residents often heard about the extraordinary dog who had reunited the Johnson family and learned the importance of valuing pets. Mrs. Jenkins, now over 80, remained one of the most enthusiastic storytellers of Buddy's tale. She loved welcoming young families and telling them about the dog who had transformed the neighborhood. "I saw it all happen with my own eyes," Mrs. Jenkins would say. "Buddy was truly a dog sent by God to save that family." Michael's blog continued to grow and became a national reference for inspiring stories about dogs. He received daily messages from people sharing their own experiences with extraordinary animals. "Buddy opened my eyes to the fact that every dog has a special story," Michael explained to journalists who interviewed him. "We just need patience and sensitivity to uncover those stories." The Johnson family's life had settled into a routine of happiness and gratitude. They had learned to cherish every moment together, always remembering the lessons Buddy had taught them about love, loyalty, and perseverance. 15 years after Buddy's passing, the family organized a grand commemorative gathering in the backyard of their home. 3 generations of the Johnson family were present, along with friends who had followed their story and dozens of people who had come to know Buddy through Michael's book and blog. Today, we celebrate not only Buddy's memory, but also the legacy of love he left behind, Michael said during the gathering. His story continues to inspire people and transform lives, even 15 years after his departure. The tree planted in Buddy's memory had become a natural and beautiful part of the backyard landscape. Children from the family played beneath its shade, always listening to stories about the extraordinary dog who had made their family's reunion possible. Robert William, now 10 years old, had become the primary storyteller about Buddy for the younger children in the family. He had memorized every detail of the story and loved sharing the heroic dog's adventures. "Buddy was the smartest dog in the world," Robert William would tell his younger cousins. "He managed to bring our whole family together just by barking and using special signals." Jessica had specialized in animal-assisted therapy, inspired by Buddy's story and the lessons she had learned from the Johnson family. She worked with trained dogs to help people with various emotional and physical needs. "Buddy showed me the therapeutic potential dogs have," Jessica explained in her professional talks. "They have a unique ability to sense our needs and offer exactly the kind of support we require." The second generation of dogs in the Johnson family had grown up hearing stories about Buddy and learning from his example. Hope, Matthew's dog, had developed some traits similar to Buddy's, displaying exceptional intelligence and family loyalty. "It's as if Buddy passed his lessons on to Hope," Matthew observed. "She has certain behaviors that remind me so much of him." Deborah had become an active contributor to Michael's blog, writing articles about caring for senior dogs and the importance of adopting older pets. Her experience with her own dogs greatly enriched the website's content. "Buddy taught me that age is no barrier to love and canine intelligence," Deborah wrote in her articles. Older dogs have a special wisdom that can deeply enrich our lives. Buddy's story had inspired many other families in the area to pay closer attention to their dogs' behaviors and appreciate the signals they send. Many similar stories, though less dramatic, began to emerge in the local community. Dr. William, the lawyer who had mediated the Johnson family's agreement, often used Buddy's story as an example of how creative solutions can resolve seemingly impossible problems. The Johnson family's story taught me that sometimes the answers we seek are right in front of us, Dr. William explained to his clients. We just need the humility to listen to all voices, including those that don't speak our language. The small foundation in Buddy's memory had expanded and now offered not only veterinary assistance but also educational programs on animal care and responsible adoption. Buddy is still saving animals even after all this time, Sarah said during a foundation meeting. His legacy of love multiplies with every life we're able to help. 20 years after Buddy first displayed unusual behavior in front of the family photograph, Michael organized a special exhibition at the National Library, telling the entire story through photos, documents, and personal belongings. This exhibition is a way to permanently preserve Buddy's story for future generations, Michael explained during the opening. We want people to keep learning from his example of love and loyalty. The exhibition drew visitors from various cities in the region, including researchers interested in animal behavior and families who had been inspired by Buddy's story. One of the most popular sections was the recreation of the Johnson family's living room, including the shelf with the original photograph and the spot where Buddy used to stand to observe the image. It's moving to see the exact place where it all began, visitors to the exhibition remarked. The exhibition also featured video testimonials from all members of the Johnson family, sharing their personal perspectives on their experience with Buddy. These testimonials became a valuable historical record of the story. Robert, now 75 but still sharp and active, moved visitors with his account of the 2 years of separation and how reuniting with Buddy had been one of the happiest moments of his life. Buddy taught me that true love knows no barriers of time or distance, Robert said in the exhibition video. Even after 2 years apart, he recognized me immediately and greeted me with the same joy as always. Sarah, also 75, spoke about how Buddy had been her source of hope during the family's hardest years. Caring for Buddy was like caring for a part of Robert that was still with me, Sarah explained in her testimony. He gave me the strength to keep believing our family would be together again. Matthew, nearing 70, reflected on how Buddy had been crucial to his emotional recovery and reintegration into the family. Buddy forgave me for the problems I caused the family and gave me a second chance to be a good member of this family, Matthew said emotionally. Michael, now 40, spoke about how Buddy had changed his perspective on animal intelligence and interspecies communication. Buddy taught me that communication goes far beyond words, Michael explained. He managed to tell me a complex story using only behaviors and signals. It was a lesson in humility and attentiveness that I'll carry with me for life. Jessica shared her professional perspective on the exceptional abilities Buddy had demonstrated. From a veterinary standpoint, Buddy displayed abilities we rarely see in dogs, Jessica explained. His emotional intelligence, communication skills, and family loyalty were far above the canine average. The exhibition remained open for 6 months and welcomed over 10,000 visitors. Many families left with a new perspective on their own pets and a renewed appreciation for canine intelligence. One of the exhibition's most significant impacts was inspiring the creation of a municipal pet education program based on the lessons learned from Buddy's story. Buddy's story has become a cultural treasure for our city, the mayor said during the closing ceremony. It represents core values like family, loyalty, and perseverance that we want to pass on to our children. Robert William, now a teenager, had begun volunteering at the foundation in Buddy's memory. He helped care for rescued animals and shared Buddy's story with families visiting the organization. I grew up hearing stories about Buddy, and now I want to continue his work of helping animals in need. Robert William explained about his interest in volunteering. Matthew and Deborah had become mentors to other families facing struggles related to debt and family conflicts. They used their experience with successful mediation as an example that complex problems can be solved through dialogue and planning. Our experience with the debt situation taught us that there's always a solution when all parties are willing to negotiate in good faith, Matthew explained during the mentoring sessions. Buddy's story had been translated into other languages, and Michael's book began selling in other countries, inspiring international families with its universal message of family love and animal intelligence. It's amazing to see how Buddy's story resonates with people from completely different cultures, Michael remarked as he received letters from international readers. 25 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a special celebration marking a quarter century since Buddy had first shown strange behavior in front of the photograph. The celebration took place in a tent set up in the backyard, under the shade of the tree planted in Buddy's memory. 4 generations of the Johnson family were present, including great-grandchildren who had grown up hearing stories about the extraordinary dog. 25 years later, we're still discovering new lessons in Buddy's story, Michael said during the celebration. Every new generation of our family finds something different and special in his tale. Robert, now 80 years old, remained the active patriarch of the family. He used the celebration to reflect on how Buddy had shaped the character of the entire Johnson family. Buddy taught us values we've passed down to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, Robert said in his speech. Loyalty, perseverance, unconditional love, and the importance of never giving up on family. Sarah, also 80, spoke about how Buddy's memory still inspired her daily actions. Every time I make an important decision, I ask myself, what would Buddy do in this situation? Sarah shared. He always chose love and family unity, so I try to follow his example. The celebration included the release of a 3rd edition of the book about Buddy, now expanded with stories from the family's newer generations and reflections on the lasting impact of his story. Matthew, nearing 75, used the occasion to announce the creation of a scholarship in Buddy's memory, aimed at young people interested in veterinary medicine or animal behavior studies. Buddy deserves to have his legacy continue inspiring new generations of people dedicated to animal care, Matthew explained about the scholarship. The Buddy Memorial Foundation had become one of the most respected animal protection organizations in the region, having helped thousands of animals and families over the years. Deborah, who had become the foundation's president, presented a report during the celebration detailing all the lives touched by Buddy's inspiring work. In 25 years, the foundation has helped over 5,000 animals and their families, Deborah reported. Every life saved is a tribute to the love Buddy brought into the world. The celebration also marked the premiere of a documentary about Buddy's story, produced by a local television station interested in uplifting tales of extraordinary animals. The documentary included interviews with the entire Johnson family, historical footage from the period of separation and reunion, and testimonies from animal behavior experts discussing Buddy's exceptional abilities. This documentary will ensure Buddy's story is preserved in audiovisual form for future generations, the project director explained. Jessica, now a renowned veterinarian specializing in animal therapy, used the celebration to announce the opening of a therapy dog training center, inspired by Buddy's teachings. Buddy showed me the transformative potential dogs possess, Jessica explained about the new project. This center will train dogs to help families going through struggles similar to what we experienced. Robert William, now a young adult studying veterinary medicine, spoke about how he intended to carry on Buddy's legacy through his professional career. Buddy inspired me to dedicate my life to animal care, Robert Williams said during the celebration. I want to specialize in canine behavior to help other families better understand their dogs. The 25th anniversary celebration also marked the beginning of an academic research project about Buddy's story, led by a university interested in studying exceptional cases of canine intelligence and communication. Buddy's story offers valuable insights into dogs' cognitive abilities and their capacity to understand and influence complex family dynamics, explained the research coordinator. During the celebration, the Johnson family received a special tribute from the City Council, recognizing Buddy's contribution to the community through the inspiration his story had provided. "Buddy became a symbol of our town," the mayor said during the tribute. "His story represents values we want to cultivate in our community: family love, loyalty, and perseverance in the face of hardship." The party lasted all day, with activities for all ages and special moments of reflection on Buddy's legacy. Children from the family participated in educational activities about animal care, inspired by the lessons learned from Buddy. One of the most emotional moments of the celebration was when the entire family gathered near the tree planted in Buddy's memory for a prayer of gratitude. Even the youngest family members took part, showing how Buddy's story had become an integral part of their family identity. "Buddy taught us that true love transcends species and endures through time," Michael said during the prayer. "His presence is still felt in every loving gesture we share as a family." The celebration ended with the Johnson family renewing their commitment to honoring Buddy's memory through concrete acts of love, animal care, and strengthening family bonds. The tree planted in Buddy's memory had become a landmark in the Hope Valley neighborhood. Neighbors often brought their dogs to walk near the tree, telling them the story of the extraordinary dog who had lived in that house. Mrs. Jenkins, now over 90, but still sharp-minded, remained one of the primary keepers of Buddy's story in the neighborhood. She loved receiving visitors interested in seeing the places where the events had happened. "I saw it all with my own eyes," Mrs. Jenkins would repeat to every new visitor. Buddy truly was a heaven-sent dog to save that family. Dr. William, though retired for many years, was still invited to speak about the Johnson family's case at conflict resolution conferences. The story had become a classic case study in creative problem-solving. "The Johnson family's case taught me that sometimes the most effective solutions come from unexpected sources," Dr. William often said in his talks. A dog was more effective at reuniting that family than any conventional strategy could have been. 30 years after the original events, Buddy's story had become a well-established local legend, passed down from generation to generation as an example of love, loyalty, and animal intelligence. The Johnson family home in Hope Valley had become a local point of interest, with people from other towns visiting to see the place where it all happened. The Johnsons kept the house as an informal museum, preserving the room with the bookshelf and the original photograph, allowing visitors to see exactly where Buddy used to position himself to observe the family picture. "It's important to preserve these historic places so people can better understand the story," explained Michael, now 45 and considered the primary guardian of Buddy's memory. The photograph on the bookshelf remained the symbolic heart of the home. 3 decades later, it still stirred emotion in everyone who knew the story and understood its special meaning. Robert William had graduated as a veterinarian and specialized in animal behavior, dedicating his career to studying cases similar to Buddy's. He had become a recognized researcher in the field of canine intelligence. "Buddy opened a completely new field of study for me," Robert William explained in his academic papers. "He demonstrated abilities we're still trying to understand scientifically." The Buddy Memorial Foundation had expanded to include an animal intelligence research center, funded by ongoing donations from people inspired by the extraordinary dog story. Jessica had become the technical director of the research center, leading studies on human-dog communication and developing new animal-assisted therapy techniques. Buddy set a standard of excellence for what we expect from therapy dogs, Jessica explained about her work. He showed how a dog could literally save an entire family through love and perseverance. The research center had documented over 200 cases of dogs demonstrating extraordinary abilities similar to Buddy's, confirming that canine intelligence was far more complex than science had previously recognized. Matthew, now 78, had become a respected speaker on overcoming financial and family hardships. His experience with debt and the solution found through mediation inspired families across the region. "Buddy taught me that no problem is too big when we have love and determination to solve it," Matthew said in his talks. "He never gave up on reuniting our family, and that taught me to never give up on my goals." Deborah had written her own version of Buddy's story, focusing on the perspective of someone who joined the family after the main events. Her book, titled Buddy's Legacy Seen Through New Eyes, offered a unique take on how the story continued to impact the family years later. When I married Matthew, I realized I wasn't just marrying him, but also Buddy's legacy, Deborah wrote in her book. The dog had shaped Matthew's personality so deeply that it was impossible to separate them. Buddy's story had inspired the creation of a national network of families who had lived similar experiences with extraordinary dogs. Michael coordinated this network through his blog, connecting people who shared similar stories. We've discovered Buddy wasn't unique, Michael explained about the network. There are hundreds of dogs across the country showing extraordinary abilities. Our mission is to document these stories and learn from them. One of the most touching stories shared online came from a family in Brasilia, where a dog had guided its owners to a missing relative who was suffering from memory issues. Another family from Porto Alegre shared how their dog had detected a serious illness in one of the family members before the doctors even did. Each story confirms that canine intelligence runs much deeper than we understand, Jessica remarked about the accounts they received. The documentary about Buddy had won awards at regional film festivals, further increasing the story's visibility. The film was shown in schools across the region as educational material about animal intelligence and family values. The City Council of New York City decided to create an official memorial for Buddy in Central Park, near the bench where Matthew used to take the dog. The memorial included a bronze statue of Buddy and plaques telling his full story. Buddy deserves to be officially recognized as a symbol of love and loyalty, said the mayor during the memorial's unveiling. His story represents universal values that transcend species. The memorial's opening attracted thousands of people, including families from other states who had been inspired by Buddy's story. It was a moving event that solidified Buddy as a publicly recognized historical figure. Robert, now 82, was invited to unveil Buddy's statue. It was a deeply emotional moment for the entire Johnson family, seeing their beloved dog honored in such a permanent way. Buddy never sought recognition, Robert said during the ceremony. He simply loved our family with all the intensity a canine heart can offer. This memorial isn't just for Buddy, it's for all dogs who love their families unconditionally. Sarah, also 82, placed flowers near the statue and whispered a prayer of gratitude to Buddy. It was a scene that moved everyone present and was widely covered by local media. The memorial became a pilgrimage site for dog owners across the region. People brought their pets to meet Buddy and often left flowers and messages of thanks. It's incredible to see how Buddy continues to inspire people and strengthen the bond between humans and dogs, Michael observed during a visit to the memorial. The Johnson family established an annual tradition of visiting the memorial on Buddy's birthday, bringing flowers and sharing memories with other visitors. These visits turned into community events, where people shared stories about their own special dogs. Robert William had completed his PhD in animal behavior with a thesis on canine emotional intelligence, using Buddy as the primary case study. His research was considered groundbreaking in the field and opened new areas of study. Buddy gave me not just professional inspiration, but also a life mission, Robert William explained about his career. I want to dedicate my life to understanding and valuing the extraordinary capabilities of dogs. Jessica had opened a veterinary clinic specializing in animal behavior, applying the lessons learned from Buddy to help other families better understand their dogs. The clinic quickly became a regional reference. With every case I handle, I think about how Buddy would approach the situation, Jessica explained about her methodology. He taught me that the key lies in truly listening to what dogs are trying to communicate. Jessica's clinic offered a special program called the Buddy Method, where families learned communication techniques with their dogs based on observations from the Johnson family's experience. The Buddy Method isn't about training dogs, it's about training humans to understand their dogs, Jessica explained to clients. Matthew and Deborah had become volunteer mentors for families facing financial crises, offering guidance based on their own experience of overcoming hardships. They particularly helped cases where pets were involved in the family dynamic. Our experience with Buddy taught us that pets can be essential in preserving family unity during crises. Matthew explained during mentoring sessions, the small foundation in Buddy's memory had grown into a national organization with branches in several American cities. Each branch maintained an educational program on canine intelligence based on Buddy's story. Buddy's legacy has multiplied far beyond what we ever imagined, Sarah said during the Foundation's annual meeting. 35 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a grand celebration marking over 3 decades since Buddy had begun his mission to reunite the family. The celebration took place simultaneously at the house in Hope Valley and the memorial in Central Park. Robert and Sarah, now 87, were still the active patriarchs of the family. Though limited by age, they remained sharp and enthusiastic about sharing Buddy's story. 35 years later, we're still discovering new aspects of Buddy's personality through the memories we share, Robert said during the celebration. The family had grown significantly over the years. Besides Robert William, Michael and Jessica had 2 more children, all raised hearing stories about the extraordinary dog who had saved their family. Matthew and Deborah had adopted 3 children over time, all raised with full knowledge of Buddy's story and taught to value animal intelligence and loyalty. Buddy didn't just reunite our original family, he inspired the creation of a much larger, more loving one, Matthew reflected during the celebration. The 35th anniversary included the launch of a children's biography about Buddy, written by one of the Johnson family's granddaughters. The book was illustrated by children from local schools who had learned about Buddy through the educational programs. We want children today to know Buddy and learn about love, loyalty, and perseverance through his story, the young author explained at the launch. Michael had become an acclaimed writer, not just for Buddy's story, but also for other books about human-animal relationships. He was often invited to speak at universities and international conferences. Buddy opened my mind to a world of interspecies communication I never knew existed, Michael explained in his academic talks. Buddy's story had been translated into over 15 languages and was studied at universities worldwide as an example of exceptional animal intelligence. International researchers regularly visited New York City to study the case. Buddy's story transcends cultural and linguistic boundaries, noted an American researcher who visited the Johnson family. It represents universal values of family love and animal intelligence. The research center in Buddy's memory had become a respected academic institution, offering graduate courses in animal behavior and interspecies communication. Students from across the country came to study there. Robert William had taken over the center's academic leadership, continuing the pioneering research inspired by Buddy. Under his guidance, the center had published dozens of groundbreaking scientific papers. Buddy laid the foundation for a new scientific understanding of canine intelligence. Robert William explained about the center's work. We're just beginning to understand the capabilities he demonstrated. Jessica had become one of the most respected behavioral veterinarians in the country, consulted by colleagues from all over Brazil on complex cases of canine behavior. Her clinic had expanded and now offered specialized veterinary residency. Every workday is inspired by Buddy's teachings, Jessica would say about her career. He showed me we must always believe in dogs' ability to surprise us. The annual tradition of visiting Buddy's memorial had become an official municipal event, with participation from the city government and animal protection organizations. The event attracted thousands of participants each year. Mrs. Jenkins, unfortunately, had passed away at 95, but not before recording dozens of hours of testimonies about her memories of Buddy and the Johnson family. Her accounts became part of the official historical archive. Mrs. Jenkins was a key witness to Buddy's story, Michael said during the memorial service for their neighbor. Her memories helped preserve important details that might have been lost. Dr. William Parker had also passed away, but left a significant professional legacy in conflict mediation. His experience with the Johnson family case had shaped his career and influenced hundreds of other cases. The Johnson family home in Hope Valley had been officially recognized as a municipal historical landmark, ensuring its preservation for future generations. The room with the bookshelf and photograph was kept exactly as it had been during the original events. "This house is a sacred place for our family and for everyone who loves Buddy's story." Michael explained about the decision to preserve the home. 40 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a historic celebration marking 4 decades since Buddy had first shown strange behavior in front of the photograph. Robert had passed away 2 years prior at 90, but not before seeing the 40th anniversary of the events. He had spent his final years telling stories about Buddy to great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren who never ceased to marvel at the extraordinary dog. Sarah, now 92, was the last surviving original participant of the main events. Though physically frail, she kept her memories clear and loved receiving visitors interested in hearing her first-hand accounts about Buddy. "Buddy changed our family forever," Sarah said during the 40th anniversary celebration. "He taught us that true love has no limits and that family is worth any sacrifice." Matthew, at 83, remained active and continued his mentorship work with struggling families. Over the years, he had helped hundreds of families, always sharing the lessons learned from Buddy. "Buddy saved me from a life of isolation and fear," Matthew reflected during the celebration. "He gave me a second chance to be part of a loving family, and I've dedicated my life to helping other families find that same bond." Michael, now 55, had become the primary guardian of Buddy's legacy. He devoted much of his time to documenting new discoveries about the story and keeping alive Buddy's message of love and loyalty. "My life's mission is to ensure Buddy's story is never forgotten," Michael explained about his work. "Every generation needs to know and learn from his extraordinary example." Jessica had become the director of a National Animal Behavior Research Institute, a position she held with great honor, always mindful of the lessons Buddy had provided. "Buddy opened a scientific path we're still exploring," Jessica explained about her career. "Every discovery about canine intelligence brings us back to the lessons he taught us." Robert William, now 30 years old, had become one of the country's most respected researchers in animal behavior. His career had been entirely shaped by Buddy's inspiration. "Buddy didn't just save my family, he also gave me a life purpose," Robert William would say about his career. "I dedicate every scientific discovery to his memory." The 40th anniversary celebration included the launch of a special book collection about Buddy, featuring academic texts, children's stories, and personal accounts from all members of the Johnson family. 40 years later, we still have new stories to tell about Buddy, Michael explained during the collection's launch. Buddy's memorial in Central Park had become one of the city's most visited sites, welcoming thousands of annual visitors from across the country. A special administration was created to maintain the site and coordinate the educational activities offered there. The Buddy Memorial Foundation had expanded internationally, with branches in other Latin American countries. The organization had helped over 50,000 animals and their families over 4 decades. "Buddy's legacy has grown far beyond our most optimistic expectations," said Deborah, who remained the foundation's international president at 80 years old. The Buddy Memorial Research Center had become one of Latin America's most prestigious academic institutions in animal behavior. Researchers from around the world came to study there, drawn by the innovative methodology based on Buddy's story. Buddy established a new paradigm for animal intelligence research, explained the center's international director. Buddy's story had inspired the creation of hundreds of similar organizations worldwide, all dedicated to promoting better understanding between humans and animals based on the principles of love, respect, and communication that Buddy had demonstrated. An international network of researchers had been established to study cases similar to Buddy's across different cultures and countries. The network had already documented over 1,000 cases of dogs displaying extraordinary abilities. Buddy was the pioneer who opened our eyes to canine capabilities that exist everywhere, explained the international coordinator of the research network. 45 years after the original events, Sarah passed away at 97, the last original survivor of Buddy's story. Her funeral was a massive community event, with thousands paying tribute not only to Sarah, but also to the memories of Buddy she had cherished so dearly. "Sarah was the most faithful guardian of Buddy's memories," Michael said during the funeral. She dedicated her last 20 years to ensuring every detail of Buddy's story was preserved for posterity. With Sarah's passing, the responsibility of preserving Buddy's original memories fell entirely to the younger generations of the Johnson family. They took on this responsibility with great seriousness and dedication. Matthew, now 88, became the last surviving member who had lived directly with Buddy. He came to be regarded as an invaluable primary source about the extraordinary dog's personality and behaviors. "I have the sacred duty to keep Buddy's memories alive as long as I live," Matthew often said. "Every story I tell about him is a gift for future generations." Michael had compiled all the memories, documents, photographs, and accounts about Buddy into a complete digital archive donated to the National Library, ensuring the story's permanent preservation. This archive will ensure that researchers and interested parties always have complete access to Buddy's story, Michael explained about the donation. The archive included over 10,000 photographs, hundreds of hours of video, thousands of documents and accounts from everyone who had known Buddy or been influenced by his story. Robert William had taken the lead at the International Foundation in Buddy's memory, continuing the pioneering work of helping animals and their families worldwide. "Buddy inspired me not just professionally, but also to dedicate my life to perpetuating his legacy of love and care for animals," Robert William explained about his new responsibility. Jessica had retired from clinical practice, but remained as a scientific consultant at the research center, focusing on training new generations of researchers in the pioneering methods inspired by Buddy. "My contribution now is to ensure that the research methods inspired by Buddy are passed down correctly to future generations of scientists," Jessica explained about her new role. 50 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a historic celebration marking half a century since Buddy had begun his extraordinary mission of reuniting the family. The celebration took place simultaneously in 3 locations: the preserved home in Hope Valley, the memorial in Central Park, and the research center named after Buddy. Thousands of people attended events across the country. Matthew, now 93 years old and in a wheelchair but still mentally sharp, was the guest of honor at the celebration. As the last surviving member who had lived with Buddy, his words were eagerly anticipated. 50 years later, I still feel Buddy's presence in our lives, Matthew said during his emotional speech. He didn't just save our family, he created a legacy of love that continues to grow and touch lives around the world. Michael, now 65, had devoted himself entirely to preserving Buddy's memory. He had written over 20 books on the subject and was considered the world's foremost authority on the story. "Buddy gave me not just a reunited family, but also a life purpose," Michael reflected during the celebration. "Dedicating my life to preserving his memory has been the greatest honor of my existence." Robert William, now 40, had become an internationally respected figure in the field of animal behavior. His research, based on Buddy's story, had revolutionized the scientific understanding of canine intelligence. Buddy laid the foundation for everything we know today about human-dog communication, Robert William explained in his international lectures. Jessica, though retired from clinical practice, remained active as a mentor and consultant, always grounding her work in the lessons learned from Buddy. "Every piece of advice I give, every technique I teach, has its roots in the wisdom Buddy demonstrated," Jessica said about her professional philosophy. The 50th anniversary celebration included the launch of a comprehensive encyclopedia about Buddy, covering all aspects of his life, family history, scientific impact, and cultural legacy. The 5-volume work was considered the definitive compilation on the subject. This encyclopedia ensures that no aspect of Buddy's story is lost to future generations, Michael explained during the launch. The federal government had posthumously awarded Buddy the title of National Cultural Treasure, officially recognizing his contribution to the understanding of animal intelligence and family values. Buddy transcended his role as a pet to become a national symbol of love and loyalty, said the Minister of Culture during the title awarding ceremony. The Johnson family home in Hope Valley had become an official museum, welcoming over 100,000 visitors annually from around the world. The museum offered guided tours, sharing the complete story of Buddy. The memorial in Central Park had been expanded to include a visitor center with interactive exhibits on canine intelligence and the history of the Johnson family. The International Foundation in Buddy's memory had helped over 200,000 animals in 50 countries, establishing Buddy as a global figure in animal protection. 55 years after the original events, Matthew passed away at 98, the last surviving person who had known Buddy personally. His funeral was an international event, with representatives from animal protection organizations worldwide. Matthew was the bridge between Buddy and future generations, said Robert William during the funeral. Through his memories and stories, he kept Buddy alive in our hearts for over half a century. With Matthew's passing, the responsibility of preserving Buddy's memory fell entirely to those who had never met the dog personally, but had been deeply moved by his story. Michael, now 70, took on the role of primary guardian of Buddy's legacy, dedicating his later years to ensuring the story was preserved accurately and permanently. "It's a sacred responsibility I accept with great honor," Michael often said. "Buddy deserves to have his story told correctly for all future generations." Robert William had become the lifelong director of the International Research Center in Buddy's memory, a role he carried out with deep dedication and respect for the dog who had inspired his career. "My entire life was shaped by Buddy's inspiration," Robert William reflected. "Dedicating my career to continuing his work is the most sincere way to honor his memory." Jessica, though physically limited by her advanced age, remained an emeritus consultant at the research center, offering guidance based on decades of experience applying Buddy's teachings. The fourth generation of the Johnson family had grown up hearing stories about Buddy and had taken on roles in preserving his memory. Each family member had a specific part in maintaining the legacy. 60 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a historic celebration marking 6 decades since Buddy had first displayed unusual behavior in front of the photograph. The event drew international attendance with representatives from universities, animal protection organizations, and governments from dozens of countries. Buddy had become a globally recognized historical figure. Michael, now 75, delivered the keynote speech reflecting on 6 decades of Buddy's impact. 60 years later, we're still discovering new ways Buddy transformed our world, he said. He didn't just save one family, he sparked a global movement of understanding and respect for animal intelligence. The celebration included the announcement of an international endowed chair in Buddy's memory, funded by donations from those inspired by his story. The chair would support research on animal intelligence at universities worldwide. "This endowment will ensure Buddy's scientific legacy continues to grow for generations," Robert William explained. The research center in Buddy's memory had become one of the world's most prestigious scientific institutions in animal behavior, with branches on every continent. The International Foundation had expanded its activities to include educational programs in schools worldwide, teaching children about animal intelligence and family values based on Buddy's story. Buddy is educating a new generation of children about love, loyalty, and respect for animals, explained the Foundation's educational director. A new tradition was established during the 60th anniversary celebration, International Buddy Day, held annually on the date he had first displayed unusual behavior in front of the photograph. International Buddy Day will be an annual opportunity for the world to reflect on the lessons he left us, Michael explained about the new tradition. 70 years after the original events, Michael passed away at 85, having dedicated over 4 decades of his life to preserving Buddy's memory. His funeral was an international event, honoring not only Michael, but also his crucial role in safeguarding Buddy's story. "Michael was Buddy's faithful chronicler," said Robert William during the funeral. "Without his tireless dedication, many aspects of Buddy's story might have been lost forever." Robert William, now 60, had fully taken on the responsibility of leading all efforts to preserve Buddy's legacy. He had devoted his entire life to this purpose and would continue until his final days. Jessica had passed away a few years earlier at 92, but not before seeing the establishment of an international animal therapy institute bearing her name. which applied the methods she had developed based on Buddy's teachings. The fifth generation of the Johnson family had taken active roles in continuing Buddy's legacy. Each family member had a specific responsibility in maintaining the various institutions and programs created in memory of the extraordinary dog. 80 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a historic celebration marking 8 decades since Buddy had first shown unusual behavior in front of the photograph. The celebration was declared a national cultural event by the US government and attracted participants from over 100 countries. Buddy had become a historical figure of international importance. Robert William, now 70, delivered the keynote speech at the celebration, reflecting on 8 decades of Buddy's enduring impact. 80 years later, Buddy's message of love, loyalty, and family unity remains relevant and needed in our world, Robert Williams said during his speech. He proved that true love knows no barriers of species or time. The celebration included the launch of an international project to create a comprehensive virtual museum about Buddy, accessible in all languages and cultures worldwide. This virtual museum will ensure that anyone, anywhere in the world, can learn about Buddy and his teachings, explained the project director. The virtual museum would feature all photographs, videos, documents, and accounts of Buddy, along with interactive experiences allowing visitors to meet the extraordinary dog virtually. The International Foundation in Buddy's memory had become one of the largest animal protection organizations in the world, operating in over 100 countries and having helped more than 1 million animals. The research center had published over 1,000 scientific papers based on Buddy's teachings, completely revolutionizing the scientific understanding of animal intelligence. 90 years after the original events, Robert William passed away at 80, having dedicated his entire life to preserving Buddy's memory. With his passing, the responsibility fully transitioned to generations who had never personally known anyone who had lived alongside Buddy. But the legacy was firmly established. The 6th generation of the Johnson family took over leadership of all the institutions and programs created in memory of Buddy, keeping his story and teachings alive. 100 years after the original events, the Johnson family organized a historic centennial celebration, marking a full century since Buddy had first displayed strange behavior in front of the photograph. The celebration was declared a global cultural event by UNESCO, with representatives from every continent in attendance. Buddy had become a historical figure of worldwide importance, studied in schools across the planet. The centennial celebration included the unveiling of a permanent international memorial to Buddy, located on land donated by the City of New York specifically for this purpose. The memorial featured replicas of the original Johnson family room, statues of Buddy at different stages of his life, and a research center dedicated solely to the study of his history and legacy. 100 years later, Buddy continues to teach the world about love, loyalty, and the importance of family, said Michael Johnson's great-great-granddaughter during the memorial's inauguration. Buddy's story had been documented in hundreds of books, dozens of films and documentaries, and was taught as part of the curriculum in schools in over 50 countries. International Buddy Day had become an officially recognized date in more than 100 nations, celebrated annually with educational events about animal intelligence and family values. The International Foundation had grown into one of the world's most important non-governmental organizations, with an annual budget of hundreds of millions of dollars dedicated to animal protection and scientific research. The research center had become one of the most prestigious scientific institutions on the planet, with campuses on every continent and thousands of researchers devoted to the study of animal intelligence. 125 years after the original events, Buddy's story was still being told, studied, and celebrated worldwide. He had become an immortal legend, a universal symbol of love, loyalty, and animal intelligence. The original Johnson family home in Hope Valley had become an international pilgrimage site, welcoming millions of visitors each year from every corner of the globe. The original photograph on the shelf remained preserved exactly as Buddy had seen it, serving as a focal point for visitors who wanted to understand where it all began. The tree planted in Buddy's memory had grown into one of the most photographed trees in the world, a living symbol of the growth and endurance of his legacy. Successive generations of the Johnson family continued to take responsibility for preserving Buddy's memory, ensuring his story would never be forgotten or distorted. Researchers from around the world still studied the original documents about Buddy, continually uncovering new aspects of his personality and behavior that deepened the understanding of canine intelligence. Hundreds of dogs worldwide had been named Buddy in honor of the extraordinary dog, passing his name down through new generations of animals. Thousands of families reported being inspired by Buddy's story to adopt dogs, pay closer attention to their pets' behaviors, or resolve family conflicts based on the examples of love and perseverance in his tale. Buddy's scientific legacy continued to grow, with new discoveries about animal intelligence regularly attributed to the foundations laid by his extraordinary story. Educational institutions worldwide maintained programs based on Buddy's teachings, educating new generations about animal respect and family values. The story of Buddy had transcended cultures, religions, and national borders, becoming a universal narrative about the transformative power of unconditional love. International animal rights organizations continued to cite Buddy as a key example in their campaigns for recognizing animal intelligence. Family therapists worldwide used Buddy's story as a tool to help families in crisis understand the importance of communication, perseverance, and mutual love. The film industry had produced dozens of movies inspired by Buddy's story, bringing his message to massive audiences across the globe. Writers, poets, and artists kept creating works inspired by Buddy, perpetuating his story through different forms of cultural expression. Natural history museums around the world maintained permanent exhibits about Buddy, educating visitors on animal intelligence and canine behavior. Universities offered full courses dedicated to studying Buddy's story and its implications for scientific understanding of interspecies communication. Modern technologies continued to be developed to digitally preserve every aspect of Buddy's story, ensuring future generations would have complete access to the original records. Buddy's story had become part of humanity's cultural heritage, preserved forever as the ultimate example of love, loyalty, and animal intelligence. Even after more than a century, new discoveries about Buddy kept emerging through research in family archives and historical documents, constantly enriching the understanding of his extraordinary personality. Buddy's impact on veterinary science was immeasurable, with diagnostic and treatment techniques being developed based on understanding how dogs can detect human health issues. Assistance dog training programs worldwide used methods inspired by Buddy's behavior, especially his ability to communicate complex information through nonverbal signals. The story continued to inspire research on animal communication, with scientists seeking to understand how other animals might possess abilities similar to those demonstrated by Buddy. Families from around the world still sent letters and messages to the International Foundation, sharing how Buddy's story had transformed their relationships with their own pets. Veterinary schools included Buddy's story as a mandatory case study, teaching future veterinarians the importance of recognizing and valuing animal intelligence. Animal-assisted therapy organizations based their protocols on the principles demonstrated by Buddy, especially his ability to detect human emotional needs. The Johnson family home in Hope Valley remained the most visited site related to Buddy's story, with waiting lists months long for guided tours. The memorial in Central Park had become one of New York City's most important landmarks, attracting millions of visitors each year, eager to see the place where Buddy used to walk. The original photograph of the Johnson family remained one of the most reproduced images in the world, a visual symbol of the story that had touched hearts across all continents. The tradition of leaving flowers at Buddy's memorial had spread globally, with people paying tribute at sites related to his story in cities worldwide. Children of all ages continued to grow up hearing Buddy's story, learning early on about values like loyalty, perseverance, and family love. The story had become a classic of world literature, included in anthologies of inspiring tales, and studied in literature courses as an example of transformative storytelling. Researchers continued to uncover parallels between Buddy's behavior and similar cases around the world, confirming that his extraordinary intelligence wasn't unique, but representative of canine abilities still poorly understood. Every new scientific study on animal intelligence referenced Buddy's story, establishing it as a foundational case for modern understanding of canine cognition. The story's central message, that love, patience, and communication can overcome any obstacle, remained relevant and necessary in a world often divided by conflict. Buddy had become more than an extraordinary dog. He had become an eternal symbol of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, love can find a way to reunite those who care for one another. Buddy's story would continue to be told, studied, and celebrated by future generations, ensuring his message of unconditional love and family loyalty would live forever in humanity's memory. His legacy had grown far beyond a simple family tale to become a global force for change, inspiring millions to cherish their pets, their families, and the bonds of love connecting all living beings. Buddy had proven that a dog could change the world, one family at a time, one heart at a time, one story at a time. And so the story of the dog who never barked but showed extraordinary behaviors whenever he saw a special photo would echo through the centuries as an eternal testament to the transformative power of unconditional love. The end of the story. Now, tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you think Buddy truly managed to convey his message through the signs he showed? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like this video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.